Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. You are inside the winner circle. I am your host, June Archer. Today, I always have amazing guests, but this one really is special to me. This gentleman is a legend. He is one of those faces when you see him on screen or in a series, he just makes you smile. You've seen him in Ghostbusters, you've seen him on Grace and Frankie, you've seen him, where you've seen him. So I don't even got to run down the list. But today we're here to talk about the reboot that he is in. Please welcome to the show the amazing Ernie Hudson. Mr. Hudson, how you doing today?
I'm so good and so grateful to be here to get a chance to talk to you. Life is a blessing, man. I'm really good.
And we woke up this morning, and what better way than to spend a few minutes with the amazing Ernie Hudson? I want to ask you.
Well, first up, let me tell you, man, I feel a little underdressed because you're looking good, man. I love that hat, because I should have been representing more. I'm in my T-shirt, but it's all good. It's all good.
When you got the tenure that you have, you could come up and show up any way you like. Sometimes that classic black tee is all you need.
Yeah, well, that's just know, man, you look great.
I appreciate you, sir. How have you been during this pandemic, and as we've been coming out? How have you been making strides?
Yeah, the pandemic, of course, it was an interesting time for everybody, the entire world. And but I knew going into I do a show called Family Business on BET, and we shut down because of the pandemic. And just the day before we shut down, one of the actors who I was working very closely with contracted COVID and almost died from it. So I went into that quarantine period almost panicked because I thought I didn't get it, but it took me a few weeks to sort of realize that. But I also became aware that a lot of the people who were having difficulties with it had pre-existing conditions. And it occurred to me that maybe since we couldn't get out there and do things, my wife and I decided we need to drop this weight. So during COVID, I dropped about 30 pounds just with, just diet and walking and exercising. And I thought, if I got to be shut down, let me use this time well. But during that almost 2-year period, God blessed me to still be working. I shot 3 movies that are about to come out that I really had a lot of fun making. So I was busy during it, but I really focused on just health and just making sure that if I did contract the disease, I had the best chance of getting through it.
And we heard, whether it be rumors or just hearsay, that people of color were getting it a
Yeah.
little more than others, and sometimes it was just that, it was pre-existing condition.
Yeah.
For you, how important? We just talked about the health part of it, but in terms of the mental health piece, and we are in a place now, this generation, where anxiety, mental fitness is a big and major part of the genetic makeup of who we are right now. How
Right.
important was it for you? You said you were wary of if you were going to get COVID. You started to work out, your wife and yourself, but how strong was the mental health perspective for you?
It's very hard. At the end of the day, it's pretty much all mental. I mean, our world is mental. I mean, we have a physical component, and it's our responsibility to give it what it needs to continue to function well, especially as we get older. I see a lot of friends who really struggling, starting from almost the age 50. I see people just, but we have to be an active participant in our own health. We can't just trust. When we're young, we just go, I can do whatever I want and the body will recover. But as we get older, the body is like, it needs your help. So you have to, you just say, and it's hard to be disciplined because there's a part of you that just wants to tune out. Just say, man, I ain't feeling like it. It's hard for me to get into the gym. It's just, I have good intentions, but there's a part of me that just says, nope, I'm not doing it. But there's some basic things, walking the 10,000 steps, I figure no matter how old, if the hips move, I still got my knees, my hips. A lot of friends have had replacements, and all mine, I got the original goods. But it's important to give at least the basic. I mean, I do push-ups, I do the sit-ups, I do just a little bit, not much. I'm not in the gym an hour or 2 hours, but I can get up in the morning, I can stretch out, just so that God bless us, but now we have to bless ourselves. And as you get older, that's really what it comes down to be able to bless yourself. I had a friend, and it was saying, so when it comes to health, his advice is do better. And he says,
Right.
I think you know what I mean. That means differently to all of us because my doing better might be different than yours, but I think you have to look at it and kind of go, that was yesterday. So how can I just ease a little bit more today? Watch the diet. Um, but all that, it's really, I think, common sense, and also I think when we're young, we get a little risky. We
Yes.
kind of go, man, I'm gonna stay up all night and party like it's, but you're gambling a little bit, but you feel like it's worth the risk. As you get older, it's not worth the risk. You can't afford to be stupid.
No, I agree with you. I want to talk about, as we're talking about getting older, getting wiser, you're getting wiser again. I love you because you're Sagittarius, as I am a Sagittarius. I'm November, you're December. But as you've gone along this journey for you, what has been the best piece of advice that you've been given that you hold on to as you getting into your more mature years?
Well, there's been a lot. I guess I go back. So much goes back to my grandmother raised me. I never knew my parents, but my grandmother, and she would say things like, don't worry about doing something brilliant or extraordinary. That'd be nice if you do, but don't worry about that. Just don't do the stupid stuff. And so most of my life has been me kind of going, that's kind of stupid. I'm not going there. You know what I mean? Just don't be stupid. And there's some things that we do and you kind of, if you don't check yourself,
Mm,
you have the conversation after the fact. So if you can have the conversation before the fact, like, do I really want to do this? I mean, so yeah, just basic, common sense stuff. Learning to be, a lot of people would profess belief in God, and my grandmother would say, if you really believe in God, if God is real, then it's very, very personal. If it's that personal, then you don't have to worry. A
mm,
lot of what's happened to us as African Americans is all the stress. I mean, and society has made it a point to just make sure we're loaded down with just baggage and stress. And so I just go, you know what, I'm gonna let that go. That's in God's hands. I can't do nothing about it. um and I'm not taking that on because it does affect my physical being. So just don't do anything stupid, and just know that let me just do what I can do. And also, when I sometimes I look at news, or I hear reports of things happening, and I have to break it down. I have to go, what's going on in my world? And there
mm.
are people over there doing awful stuff, and this bad thing happened. But in my world, people are nice to me. You know what I mean? I get along. So I know it's happening in the world, but let me just focus on right now where I am and what God has given me, and not let me take on stuff that's happening in Ukraine
Right.
and stress over. So not that I don't care about Ukraine, it's just that I can, if it's something I can do, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'm not losing sleep over it.
And just being grateful where you are and where you sit in this moment.
So thankful to be in this life, to be given this blessing, to be given the blessing of life. The odds of any of us even being born is so astronomical. I
Yes.
mean, to to get this blessing, to see the sunshine. I mean, it's just so we just have to, being grateful is so important, and we have to remind ourselves, that we're not some victim, you know, disadvantaged. You know, there are groups who want us to believe that they are entitled to everything and we're entitled to nothing. Just no, man, I ain't buying none of that. Like I
Mm.
said, whatever your definition of God is, I'm not talking about a religion. I don't care what you call it, but if there's a power greater than we are, um, that is trusting things, is connecting things, and you don't have to look far to see examples of just how I got to this place. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he's done very well. He's about to retire, and we both grew up in the same projects, and so a lot of our friends, fell along the way. But he says, it's a wonderful time. I'm so blessed to have all these amazing. I can live the life that I always dreamed of. He said, but the thing is, I can't take credit for it. I can't say
Right.
I'm here because of all the amazing things that I was so smart. He said, by the grace of God, man, I couldn't have made all this happen, but here I am, and I'm so thankful.
You never had the opportunity to meet your father. Your mom passed away at a very young age, raised by your grandmother. I want to ask you this. How was she able to instill in you who you are and whose you were
Yeah,
in those formative years, especially? And how did that affect you? Did you feel like you lost something? Did you feel like you didn't lose because you know who you were and whose you were? If you can, I would love to just have you just give us just a little piece of how she was able to do that, because you have changed, whether you choose to believe it or not, changed lives. You've touched lives, Brother Hudson, um, and that isn't by happenstance.
right. Well, I think as a little kid, because see, my mom died of tuberculosis when I was about 3 months old, and she got pregnant in East St. Louis. Her family was in Michigan, and so as she got sick, uh, she came up to Michigan to give birth to me. And so nobody in my family knew my dad. So it wasn't that I never met him, it's just nobody knew kind of who he was. I had a name. When she died, there was a name on my birth certificate. Nobody knew who that person was. But now I have a brother who's 3 years older, who my mother had been married to his dad, and they had split up, and she went to East St. Louis, where she met my dad. Um, so we knew his dad was Tommy Hudson, but because my mom died, she asked that my brother and I share the same name. So that's where Hudson comes from, even though Hudson is not my dad's name, because she wanted us to. Now, what happened was I always felt illegitimate because it wasn't my name. It was my
Right.
brother's name. So when I was at school and I'd fill in the name, your father's name, I didn't have anything that sort of, and it bothered me as a little kid that I didn't have a dad. Now we were in the project, so there were a lot of kids who didn't know who their father was, but or didn't have their father around, but at least they knew who he was. They knew what he looked like, but I didn't know any of that. And my grandmother, and I must have been about 4 years old, one of the earliest memories I have, she set me down and she said, and I said, Mama, I don't have no daddy. She said, well, we'll never know who your biological father is, but God is your father.
Mm.
Now, we grew up in church. I was, people say you grew up in the hood. No, I grew up in church. I was either at school, at home, or in church. We went to church almost every day. Um, and I said, well, Mama, God is everybody's father. That's what they say in church. God is your father. It's like, what? She said, no, 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 no. I want you. She said, God is everybody's father. She said, but everybody don't know it. And I'm telling you so that you know who you are and who you belong to. And so as a little kid, I think if she had told me that in my teens, I probably would have dismissed it. But as a little kid, I go, wow, God is my father. And God made all this. And I can ask God for, and she would say, God is personal. That when you talk to God, it ain't about God out. God is with you, personal. And so when you ask, it is given, to you personally. And you can, so in all different times of my life, when things just became so overwhelming that I just go, okay, I just sit there, I just have a conversation with God. And somehow something unfolds in an amazing way. So I always believed God is my father. I would, on the way to school, I would look around at all the birds and the different species and ants and life. And I thought, all this life, in the middle of making all of this, God found time to make me, to create me. That I gotta be special. The universe would not be the same if I wasn't here. So I'm important to all of this. So she said, well, the good news is you don't have to hang your head to nobody. Nobody's better than you. And maybe the bad news is you know better than anybody else. So
Right.
So I just never questioned if just a matter. The hardest thing for me was finding out what the question is, what to ask for. We can identify what we don't like. It's hard for us sometimes to say, you know what, I want this. Because if you ask, it is given. But the more you focus on the things you don't want, in a way, that's sort of asking for more of that. And so, but that to me is, I've always never doubted. I've had moments when it was hard. I had moments when I just got, I just had to get on my knees. And, I remember being coming out of an audition that I wanted so badly because I needed to pay the rent, get the phone on. I was a single dad, and just breaking down in tears going, oh man, I just knew I messed up. And I just said, God, please. And then the phone would ring and I got the job, So that is the single most important concept, is that I belong to God. And I also belong to my grandmother. I remember being in church, and there was a sister there who was teaching the little kids. We had Sunday school in the back of the church. The grown people would be up in the front. And I was restless, I remember I couldn't even touch the floor. I was swinging my legs on the pew, looking up at, wasn't paying attention. She said, you better pay attention to me. And I tried, but it was hot. You know what I mean? Little bugs flying around. And she said, boy, I'm talking to you. And so she reached over and she thumped me on the head. Wow. And I just started crying, man. She thumped me. It was more embarrassing because the kids laughed. And I remember looking up in the front of the church and I saw my grandmother. She turned almost like in slow motion. She looked back and she got up, walked to the center aisle, and started walking down the aisle. And everything just stopped.
Everything.
That stopped. And she walked in. My grandmother was not a big woman, but she just commanded a certain respect. And she walked up to this Sister Addie, who was a big sister. And she said, did you hit my boy? And Sister Addie said, no, I didn't hit him. I thumped him. And my grandmother took a step forward and said, this is my boy. Don't you touch him. You got a problem with him, you come and see me about it, but don't you touch my boy. And then we stared down, and then Sister Addie backed up. And then my grandmother turned to me and wiped the tears away, and she said, baby, you all right? And I said, uh-huh. And then she looked at me, and she looked at Sister Addie, and then sort of scanned the church. And then she walked back. He's mine. He belonged to me. Wow. And I always knew my grandmother, I never doubted if she had to lay down her life. She came up to school a lot of times, but she would come up and she'd stand there. She wouldn't even say a word. She would just stand there, and they'd start apologizing.
Right. Nobody wanted that smoke. Nobody wanted that smoke.
No. She was, and even now, she passed away in 79, but there are things that I won't do because honestly, I wouldn't want to see her face, because she would just look at me like, why would you do that?
Ernie,
you know what I mean?
Ernie, that was just stupid. So what did she call you? Did she call you Ernie?
Yeah, no, she called me Poochie. But sometimes when she was a little frustrated, she would call me Ernest Lee. Ernest Lee was because my name is Ernest
the whole
Lee.
Government.
Yeah, that's right. But everybody called me Poochie. In fact, it wasn't until I got out of high school, even the teachers called me Poochie. That was a nickname that became Ernie. Ernie was so annoying to me because I got a job at this factory. It was all white German workers they had hired. This company had never hired. It formed in 1870 something. They had never hired a black person. I was the first black person they hired as a janitor. And these people was Ernie. I'm like, oh my God, this drove me nuts. So I was always Ernest. And then when I became an actor, my agent said, no, Ernest is too formal. Use Ernie. So
Mm.
I'm Ernie, and my oldest son is Ernest. And then he has a son who is Neto because he's half Mexican, and his name is, in Spanish it's Ernesto. But at any rate, so and then he has a son who's NJ. So it's four generations of Ernest Hudson's, which I'm very, very thankful for. Anyway, I'm rattling on, man. I'm just,
No, I love it. These are things that people have followed your career and they don't know. And you had such an illustrious career. I want to talk about your journey as it relates to getting or pursuing your doctorate and leaving that and walking away and going to Yale to study acting and walking away from that and taking some time to go into the service and walking away from that and then having this amazing career. What allowed you? We talked about grandma. We talked about what she said in terms of doing the right thing, not doing the stupid things. But what allowed you to stay focused that you continued on this journey to be who you are today?
well, I think we all, my grandmother would say God gave his son the keys to the kingdom. We're all his children, and we all have the keys, but we have different kingdoms. No two is the same. Your world is similar to mine as it is. It's uniquely yours. You know what I mean? And how you see it, how you perceive it. So we all have these things that influence us. And for me, I first off, I got out of high school, but before I got out of high school, I knew I couldn't stay in Benton Harbor. I mean, it was, it just, I had to get out of there. So my out was to join the military. So I went before I was going to graduate at the end of June. I went in April. I hitchhiked to Chicago to sign up to the Marine Corps. Me and two buddies. One buddy didn't get in because he didn't pass the exam, but me and another buddy, we got in, and they waited for us to graduate before we had to go. So I wanted to get out. I joined the Marine Corps, and when I graduated, flew to San Diego, and man, the Marine Corps, I thought, oh, it was the worst night of my life, man. It was like,
They are serious. They are serious business.
oh man, back in the '60s, the Marines, it was insane, and I thought I just was praying that it was a bad dream. Also, when I got in the Marine Corps, I never heard of Vietnam because the government didn't talk about what was happening in Vietnam. This was in '64, the very beginning when the real stuff started happening. So our entire platoon was headed for Vietnam. And I was there for about 9 weeks in my asthma. The drill instructor forced me to eat some shrimp that I told him I was allergic to, but he didn't believe those little things could do any. So he made me eat it. And I had a big asthma attack. And on the way to sick bay, the medic said, man, you got that asthma, you can get out of here. They ain't gonna let you go in Vietnam with that asthma, man. You get everybody killed. So
Ernie
I had
Ernie got
asthma,
cut loose because
man.
of that asthma. He got that asthma.
So anyway, I got discharged, came back home. Now I'm back home, stuck in this town, trying to find a job, living in my grandmother's place in the project. There was a girl I was seeing who had a bad sort of, it wasn't really bad, but she considered it bad, home life situation. Mother made her wash dishes one night and she was crying. And I said, well, we could get married. And she said, okay. And I was just saying something to be nice, but my grandmother said, no, that ain't going to happen. You tell her. But she said, well, you lied to me then. You didn't want, I'm saying, well, so I married. We got married. This is in '64. She had, well, anyway, I can go on and on. But we got married. And, but then now I realize I'm working at this company as a janitor. And it hits you one day that this is your life. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? I'm like, wow, man, this is it. I'm going to be a janitor the rest of my life. And then I found out after we've been married a few months, my wife was pregnant. Now that was really big because I'm going to have a son. I didn't have a dad, so I always wanted to be a dad, but I'm living in my grandmother's house, and you know what I mean? So So I did what my grandmother told me. About 3 o'clock in the morning, man, I got out of bed, and I got on my knees and I just had a conversation with God, just I'm having a son. I want to be a good father. I don't know what to do. I've done everything. I was working all kinds of little jobs, trying to do everything there. And the spirit came to me. It was like a voice that said, "Go downstairs and take the tube out of the back of the TV," which made no sense to me. And I'm
Right.
like, what? I mean, I'm asking for answers. Take the TV. So I did it. I went downstairs, opened up the television. Back in those days, you could open up the back, took the little tube out. Television didn't work.
Right.
And my wife said, the TV's not working. I didn't say anything. But what I found was I would go to work, come home, she'd cook a little dinner, and we would sit there in front of the TV till night, and then I go to bed, and we was just a routine. We just watched television and went to work. That was it. But once the TV didn't work, we started to
Wow.
talk to each other, and I found out that she brilliant. She ended up actually going from the ninth grade to getting her PhD. So we began to talk and share ideas and what if, and suddenly I never considered going to college. I graduated from high school with a 1.7 average because I didn't really try. I was like, what's the point? I never saw the how it mattered to me.
Right.
But suddenly I want to get into college. I can't get into anybody's college, but it inspired me to go, I can do better. I can reach for something better. And so it was always that sense of, I want to be a good dad. I want to set an example. And when my two sons were born, the marriage ended. But I always knew I had to set an example because it didn't matter what I said to them. If I couldn't live it, if I couldn't walk it, I can't say to them, I want you to go to college and I didn't go. I want you to be successful, but so it was important for me that I tried to realize this American dream just so that they could see that this is America and anything is possible. And I want to show up for you because people, I can't go to jail.
Right.
I'm
Not
asking
an
God
option.
to help me to avoid whatever, but that ain't an option because if I do, what happens to my kids? And so, and once I've decided once I discovered theater, that was the prayer again. I prayed. Now I prayed. You got to be careful with these prayers because you got to ask for the whole thing. I asked God
Mm.
when I discovered theater.
Hold
I
on.
thought,
Hold on, Ernie. Hold on, Ernie. Hold on. Hold on. Say that again for the people in the back. When you
yeah,
when you ask for these prayers,
yeah, yeah. You got to be specific. See,
and you got to take everything that comes along with it.
and you got to take. I'm in it now. God's going to do His part, and I'm going to do my part. I'm going to stand. I'm going to stand on His word. I'm not going. I'm asking for this. So I went to see a play by accident. Just happened to be driving by a theater, and I saw some people lined up. I didn't know what it was. I got out and stood in line because I didn't want to go home and fight with my wife. And so I got in line and went in, and this play called Papa's Daughter at the Detroit Repertory Theater. And I sat there and the curtain went up, and oh my God, man, this play was wow. It was just wow. I mean, that was so amazing. And I thought, wow, if I could do that. I mean, at first it was too big a prayer. I can't even ask for that, but if I could. And then I took a class that fall semester in college, an acting class. And when I walked on stage, I just knew I was at home. And I'm
Mm.
like, man, I can do this. I mean, I got this. Now, let me just understand now. I get the script and I learn the lines, and then I get paid. Man, I got this. So my prayer is, God, if you bless me to have this career, if you bless me to be able to be an actor, I promise you, I will give my best. I will show up on time. I will I will represent you and everything that you are. All the goodness that you give to me, I'll give back to my career. Acting for me is like a love affair. I'm going to love you 100%, but I expect you to give me some loving too.
Absolutely.
We ain't going to be in this relationship, but I'm doing
Gotta
all
be
the giving.
giving. It's got to be give and take.
Give and take. And I don't expect you to give me everything, and I'm going to not show up. So, and that's how times that, like I said, it's been, but I just know, no, I'm going to stand on God's God's word. I asked, it said it'd be given, and and then out of nowhere, oddly enough, rarely from the people who I expected, the people who I might have gone the distance for, people who I loaned the money, I'm expecting the money back now. Somebody over there who just got here from London just happened to be, God put us together, and now all of a sudden this blessing, and that's been, my that's God is and that's and I so I've always stood. Now other things in life, I always loved singing, but I didn't, I just couldn't, I just I didn't, I guess I just couldn't see that. I didn't have the confidence for that. You know what I'm saying? I can sing at home all day, but I didn't have I did musicals. I can learn a song, but acting, I was able to own that in a way that I started out thinking myself as a playwright. I went to Yale. When I got into college, and graduated, I got a scholarship to Yale, but it wasn't a good fit. But but the writing I couldn't hold on. But acting is always something that is just, I got this, and yeah, I just yeah, and here I am, 50 some years later. I'm still dancing.
No,
You know,
and dancing to the best of your ability. And what I'm hearing is, when be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it. And
you
when you
will.
get
Yeah.
it, you it's not 74, it's not what 70-30, not 60-40.
Right. Yeah.
It's 50-50. If you're gonna do the work, you get what you get out of it by
Right.
putting in that 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, by learning your craft. Like you said, if I read this script and I do my absolute very best,
Yeah.
I get paid for that. That's putting together the combinations that our young people don't get to see. And as we reimagine education, Brother Ernie, we have to give them the opportunity to go to the theater, like you bucked upon it by happenstance,
Right.
right? Because you didn't
Right.
want to go home. But what if we are intentionally giving our young people the opportunity to see what it's like to be on camera, on stage, but
Yeah.
sometimes behind the scenes? And how do they fall in love with that if we don't give them those combinations? We just say, go to school, get an education.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How important is it for us to make sure our young people can be creative and find their way in creative arts?
Yeah. That's so important. Now, I am thankful. This is not meant to be critical about integration. But before integration, we had our communities. We had places where we had to learn from each other because we were in these controlled communities. Once we sort of spread out, those of us who could got away, and so they didn't feel the need to. When I went to Detroit in '66, it was theaters. It was like a lot of community theaters. People were doing, that whole Black consciousness. We were doing plays. It was just, I joined a group called Concept East Theater. I got a chance to write some plays. I got a chance to learn how to, run the lights. When an actor didn't show up, I was a writer. They hired me as a playwright. But when actors didn't show up, I would step in because the show must go on. We have to provide those opportunities. I think as a community, we fell into this trap of feeling like we paid the dues in this country. We built this country, and so we are owed. And there's a part of us that kind of waits for, you owe me. When am I going to get what to do?
Right.
And the government they ain't going to give it. It ain't coming. You know what I mean? Sometimes people might, a little grant here or there. We rely on them, or them is us. I realize we're part of it, but to provide and support. But we need these community theaters and groups, and all from all walks of life, all kinds of occupation. We have to be the ones to create the opportunity. So I tell people, I say, well, I don't like to go see plays. Well, support the local theater anyway. You know what I mean? Throw a little donation that way. Do whatever. We have to rely on ourselves to create the opportunity. It should be um, an association for young actors where they can go and get information. We've become this, and I'm being general in a lot of ways here, but for me and a lot of people I know, it's a lone wolf journey. I relied on God, but I can't look to anybody and say, thanks to the NAACP, I was able to get a job, thanks to so and so. So I've had to go it alone for the most
Right.
part. Now, I've tried to reach down and hear brothers talk about it and any advice you can do to help somebody, and it shouldn't be, every man for himself, because when you make it, then I don't know, I'm not obligated to. I remember having an interview years ago during the Ghostbuster time. I was at Johnson Publication and they were considering doing an article. And I'm saying, now's the time I need you to support me. So I can
Right.
look back and say, well, they at least, if you're waiting until the, the greater community, the establishment recognize me, now you want to do a feature on me, that's natural. Finding that talent that you can support when we need that support. Once I'm here, I got a couple dollars now. I'm good.
Right.
So and I think,
Respectfully, I may not even need you now.
and
Respectfully.
honestly, I don't need you now. But
Right.
I mean, I can help you by being in your magazine, and you can sell. But what I needed you, and of course they didn't hear that because they didn't do the article. But I think we have to find ways to come together to support each other. Businesses, we keep looking forward to be outside of us, and it's not going to be us, and it's hard to define an us. One of the
Mhm.
one of the only good things that came out of slavery was whites were so adamant about it being a country for whites only. It forced all of us to come together, because you go to South Africa, some other places, they got different groups, so we ain't recognizing each other. But we as a people at least acknowledge all of us as part of this, this Black experience. But we've got to provide opportunities. I've never done anything. I used to tell my grandmother, if it don't make sense to me, if I can't win, I'll be
Right.
honest with you. If I'm going to sit here at the table and we're going to play a game and I know I can't win, I ain't playing.
Oh, you a Sagittarius like me?
Man,
I gotta listen.
I gotta have a chance, man. Come on. My son, he said, Dad,
I
he said,
come to
we never play
compete.
basketball anymore. He said, how come we don't play basketball? I said, because when you turned about 15, you started kicking my butt every time we played. I
Why I
don't
want to
want to
play?
play. No, why? No. So in America, our kids don't feel there's a place for them. Now,
Mm.
America has worked hundreds of years to make sure we come away with a feeling we're not American. It took us,
Yeah.
it's only been about 100 years that they even acknowledged us as American citizens, even though we're born here. Blacks were not American citizens. I don't know if people realize, they think, oh, well, we've naturally, no. Blacks were not American, even Asians weren't considered American. American citizens meant white people. So finally, we got the right to call ourselves, but they made sure that we realized we don't have all the rights. Civil rights was only us saying we want to have the same rights as everybody else.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have to embrace each other and say, we haven't got there yet. So we got to support anybody. And I think we're spiritual beings and we're called to different things. So if homelessness is an issue for you, support the people who are doing. If you can't get out there and open a shelter, support those people who are out there doing it. If
Absolutely.
theater and because I look at where the talent's coming from. I look at all these people I work with now, and I'm thinking, oh wow, it's the doors open. We're in, but it's not our kids. They're from London, or from someplace else in the world, and it's just, we're all one people. So I ain't got a big issue with that. But I would love to see some brothers from Detroit or Philadelphia or what our children
Absolutely.
to have
Absolutely.
a place to belong. My grandmother gave that to me, that I belong to her. We need to feel that we belong. We're not out here by ourselves. And for a long time, I just felt like, first time I was on Broadway, the only time I was on Broadway, it didn't come from a black production company. It was a white guy who, the first white guy, Bart Shear, who directed an August Wilson play on Broadway, cast me.
Mm.
And I'm like, I mean, you know what I'm saying? We
I no,
got to support
I
each other. That's all.
absolutely, absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. I wanna take you down another avenue. You are a proud dad, and you just did a podcast of what it meant to be a dad. This is a two-part question.
Right.
Being a dad and loving it, how has it made you a better man, a better human being, and mentorship as well? You work with my brother Darren Henson, and I know that he learns a lot, and a lot of young actors learn a lot from you because you are seasoned, because you've been here. What do fatherhood and mentorship mean to you?
Well, it means a lot, man. I mean, I kind of I was able to deal with, because of my grandmother, in a way that I was able to sort of keep moving. But having a father, having someone who cares, having someone who kind of demonstrates, it means it just means so much, because it can, you can save you a lot of. I mean, it's just we shouldn't have to fight the same battles. I already fought that battle. You know what I'm saying? So if I can pass on anything to anybody that is trying, any information that would be helpful, so you don't have to go through what I went through, not knowing if it's going to work out or not. I mean, I think so. We have to take the time. But listen, I'm 70. I'll be 77 years old in another couple of months. I got to check out of here. You know me. I'm trying to make peace with death. Whenever it comes, I don't want to be afraid. I want to be able to make peace with that. I know that might sound a little weird. So to help those who are coming along, my children, my grandchildren, to help another brother. Maybe that brother might be the one to help my great grandkid, whatever. But we're all one. First off, in all honesty, I know we talk a lot about the whole African American experience, or being whatever part of that tribe, that group. Truth of the matter, we're beings. I mean, we're
First and
all
foremost.
beings, first
First
and
and
foremost.
foremost.
And then and that is with all life forms. I don't care what it is, birds, tigers, whatever. And then we're human beings. So human, that's specific. That ain't birds and tigers. We are human beings. That's all human beings. White, what, all that color stuff is just a social construct. Doesn't mean anything, but it means something to the people who believe it means something. So we're human beings. And honestly, I try not to look at anybody. And I don't look at my white friends and go, he's my friend, he's a white guy or whatever.
Right.
He's a human being. We're all in this together. But I'm also part of a tribe, part of that is African American, that we share. Even a little bit different than, say, American, Black from other parts of the world. We African Americans who went through the slavery issue here, we have a lot of stuff. We talk about COVID and pre-existing condition. That's not a physical thing. That's society has put so much stress and struggle and just survival shit on us that it's we have to support each other. I know we have to say we're in this thing together, and if we can help the next generation to find purpose, because the country is not giving it. We thought, well, if we can all have an education, and now there's a real effort to make sure that our kids don't get an education.
Right.
I was able to take theater in high school. I didn't know I'd be an actor, but I did have a theater class. That ain't even accessible anymore. So how do they find? Yeah, I think we're going to have to find a way to come together with people of like minds to create opportunities so these kids do feel that there's a place for them, that they got a chance. If they, in the old days, just to finish this whole thing up, but in the old days, I remember people would say, well, there's not much for me, so I'll probably just, I don't know, finish high school, get a job, and get married, and maybe get a house. And that's it. That was like the least you could expect. If I don't be stupid, don't do something awful, at least I can get a job, get a place, and have a life. We can't even say that to our kids anymore.
Yeah.
They're telling our kids that they're not even a job for them. I mean, jobs have been sent offshore. The ones that are here now are, you go to the grocery store, nobody's, it's technology is taking over those. we're not offering any assistance. So what is there? We want you to be creative, but we're not going to give you any hint as to how to make a living at it.
Right.
So I think we're going to have to realize that if we're going to compete, because other groups are preparing. I mean, I'm seeing Asians, East Indians. I'm seeing all these other groups, but
Well prepared, way beyond our young
yeah,
black and brown boys and girls who don't even know what STEM or STEAM is, and
yeah,
only getting a piece of it where they are, even if they are in decent schools,
right,
but these
yeah,
inner city schools and schools that are in the hood and in these impoverished areas, they don't have the means to have the technology that allows these kids
yeah,
to even play on the same playing field
right.
with their peers
Their
that
peers,
are.
yeah. And which is so amazing, but then I see people somehow, in spite of that, break through. But they're the exceptions, and they shouldn't be the only exceptions. Even if they have come from a middle class family, it doesn't guarantee that their kids are going to be able to have the opportunity. I was able to come through that whole civil rights thing, so I was able to get a scholarship, go to college. I mean, um, but what I will also say, and I don't think it will go away, that, like I said, my faith in God. There were always people from all kinds of persuasions, people who would reach out. People want to help, but they want to see you trying. So when you're reaching for greatness, there are people who will, take them on. People who normally wouldn't like you will somehow be touched to reach out. But our kids need to know that it's possible, because you can't even dream when you just feel like the dream will never be realized.
I agree. 1989 is when Quantum Leap first hit the scene, and we are 30 years
Yeah,
now into
yeah,
this reboot. You are now part of this show. You play Herbert Magic Williams, head of
yeah.
the Quantum Leap Time Project, who is a Vietnam War veteran.
Right. That's right.
How, listen, you can't make this stuff up.
That's
Um,
right.
what are we facing 30 years later with Quantum Leap, and what can we be prepared for with this new reboot?
Well, it's we've already had this episode, so I guess I can talk freely about it. Herbert, my character Magic, is one of the maybe the only character that we see who was actually leaped into. I'm product of that. That I'm in Vietnam. Things are going. He's very intuitive and spiritual, which is how he got the name Magic. But something happens to him. His He's taken over, and these amazing things happen. He comes out of it, and he's saved his old platoon. Life altered, change, and he doesn't even know what happened, but something happened which bothers him. And then he finds out as he moves up in the military that there was this program called Quantum Leap that has been shut down. And as he digs, he gets the files and digs through it, find out that he was a product that happened to him. And the reason he's still alive is because of this leap. So he works hard, and the person who saved him never made it back. So
Mm,
he works hard to get this project up, gets the approval from the Pentagon. There are a lot of people who are hoping for the success, but a lot of people are hoping that he doesn't succeed. He pulls together this really brilliant team, and now they're going to get back into it and bring Sam Beckett, the original leaper. But my head scientist, he takes it upon himself to leap unofficially. We don't know why. He's not an irresponsible person. Something is happening. So that puts everything in a situation where now I've got to explain, I've got to keep this thing running before they shut it down, and he's trapped out there as well. So there's a lot going on the home front, but in the meantime, this guy is doing these leaps into people's lives at these critical times in their lives. And so that it's sort of a continuation of the original quantum leap, but of course it's 30 years later, so technology has changed.
right.
The computer, Ziggy, who is the artificial intelligence who creates the possibility, it's more advanced now because technology is much more advanced, and um, so there's a lot of things going on, but this is not a reboot. We're not trying to do the other one. This 30 years in the future, and this is where we are now. And I think it's, for me, what I love about the show is it's really an opportunity for people to review. We've talked a little bit about it, of the past,
Right.
from a perspective that was real during that time. Because a lot of times we look at the past, we look at and we say, wow, they should have, and I would have, but we don't know the circumstances. I can't
Right.
imagine what our people came through to get to this place. I just thank God that they were able to endure
Right.
to get us here. So that's what I tell people. That's why I want to live my best life, just out of honor and respect to my ancestors, who, because God, I it's incomprehensible. But what the show does, it allows us to go back to some historical events and times and places, people who we normally would not connect with, and see things from that perspective. There's an episode coming up where he leaps into an African American woman doctor who's having a crisis, and so having to take the world from her place, being that exceptional young lady who's in this situation. Um, and so that is what I loved about the original show, and that's what I love about this show. And it really creates a platform to have a good discussion
Mm.
about. I saw a post that a young man did to um, Mason Park, who plays Ian on our show. He's the guy who runs the computer, and he's non-binary. And this is from a young man who said, thanking him because his father was a big fan of Quantum Leap, and he loves the show. And so for his father to see Mason portray that character, and for him to love that character, it forced him to have to look at his own son, who's
Mm.
non-binary, in a different way. And he said it's changed their relationships, and he's just so thankful. So we live our stories, and Quantum Leap is one of those things where we can realize we're sharing this whole, like I said, we're all beings in spirit, and we're all connected, whether we want to um, accept that or not. But it does allow us to be a little less judgmental, because we think we know. People look at you and they go, I know people look at me and say, "Oh, he's a black guy," and in that definition, they think they know everything about me, and I'm like,
Right.
that's
Did you
that
sum
ain't
it all
me.
up right there?
That's right. Yeah, he's just a black guy. He's a big black guy who, like, nah, it's a little bit more going on than that. But we're all, yeah, we're all in this, and if that can give us, something we can share, communicate with, because just and COVID did not help, but it's possible. But stories are so important. I think this could be an important show.
I'm excited for it. Uh, I want to ask you two things before I let you go. Music is the soundtrack to our lives. What song best represents your journey up to this point, or what artist embodies your journey up to this point?
Um, uh, I did a show once, and part of the program music was Nancy Wilson's "You're Going to Hear From Me," and she has a little thing she talks about: "Move over, sun, give me some sky. I got some wings. I'm eager to fly. You're going to hear from me." And I'd love that. Always sort of, when I play that, it kind of it's sort of my anthem to. But I love to wake up with the Dells. And I can't even think of this, but I love the Dells. It's one of my favorite all-time groups. Back in the day, and they have a song. It was on, I don't know what album, but it's about good morning, son. They wake up in the morning, and the birds on the song are tweeting, and they and then they have a song called "I'm Going to Be a Friend" that is
Mm.
always inspiring. And Jerry Butler, his music when I was a kid was he was my favorite singer, and he still I love to listen to and Marvin Gaye. you know, I just his um, his music just has always inspired me, and I just love to I just love his work. But I'm still, you know, they say the music you listen to when you're in junior high and high school is the music that, you know,
Right.
and I, you know, there are a lot of there's a lot of music over the years you take on, and some of the jazz stuff that I really like. But at the heart of me is still the old rhythm and blues, you know, the yeah, you know, and
Do you have any
really,
50 Cent in your iTunes collection?
you know, I don't. I mean, I but you
We
know,
gotta make you a playlist.
okay, yeah, big yeah, because I got kind of lost, you know. I mean, I when that first oh god, when the Rapper's Delight came out, you know, and I'm singing, I love that song, and then rap sort of went into place. I'm like, I because lyrics are so important to me, and a lot of times it's hard for me to really. So, but I also know that sometimes people will introduce, you know. So I'm going to check out 50 Cent. I really hadn't really looked into. I saw him a couple weeks ago. He was performing at a. But I should sit down and um, you know, I was listening to a Kanye piece that I really did not like, but you know, I just have to be a little bit more open. You know, as you get
I
older, you
got you.
got to go. You
I
know,
got you. I'm gonna
okay.
curate a nice little playlist for you. You're
Yeah.
gonna be great.
I
Uh,
I look forward to it. Yeah, no, I do because I'm always open. You know, because I've sort of considered things that I used to couldn't stand, but I kind of go, well, let me. It takes a moment with music. You have to almost
yes.
sort of settle into it and really listen to it.
You're Sagittarius. I know who you. I get it. I get it. I get it. I want to end by saying thank you so much. You're such a humble individual, an amazing human being. I also want to thank you. What I think is really important is that you make getting older so cool, and I have to reference it with the Grace and Frankie show, where the three of you just make it look so cool. You guys are still a little frisky. You guys are trying to stay up with technology, and you're still doing the things that you feel like you're young, but it breathes life into a generation who has to look forward to that saying that I have more years behind me than I have
Yeah.
ahead of me. Ernie, what is your legacy, and what does that mean for you as you are looking towards, you got more life left in you, brother. And I look forward to spending some time with you and picking your brain. But when it's all said and done, and you are going to retire like your friend has retired, what do you want people to say about the legacy of Ernie Hudson?
Well, you know, I'm not sure. I think legacy, but I think, like I say about Sidney Poitier, you know, he just, or like I said about my father-in-law, he was a good, he was a good man. And he lived a good life. You know what I mean? He didn't live a life where with a lot of regrets or with a lot of anger or with a lot of you know, he lived a good life. He set an example. He was a good man, and I think that's he represented well. You know what I mean? He didn't. Yeah, that's. I suppose that at the end of the day, that's all. You know, try to be a good human being, a good citizen. You know, and I realize that every journey is different. And having four sons now, I wish I could run alongside of them and offer aid as they, you know, when they need it. But I have to let them take that journey, and I realize it's not mine. You know, but be respectful and to not judge. So I don't know. Just I have no idea what people will say or do say. I just hope that you know, my grandmother would say, you know, if you're gonna be an old black man, be an old black man with a little money. If you're gonna be an old black man, be an old black man, you know, in good health. You know what I mean? If you can, now some things are out of our control. If you be an old black man, be an old black man who was there for his kids and took care of his kids. Be an old black man, a man who met someone and was a good companion and a good husband and a, you know, and was there. If you're gonna be here, reflect the best of what's possible, what God is able to do. You know what I mean? I think that's to live this life is a gift, so to live it as best you can, um, just an appreciation of what God has given to you.
Brother Hudson, I can't thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Ernie Hudson. Grandma said, don't do nothing stupid. Make sure when you have the opportunity to give back, you reach back and invest in our future, invest in our young people. Be a good human being. These are the things that Brother Hudson shared with us today. And lastly, when you pray, make sure it's intentional and be careful what you pray for because you just might get it. And when you get it, what are you going to do with it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's Ernie Hudson. I'm your host, June Archer. This is the Winner Circle. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. God bless you. Love you. Like it, share it, love it. And tell somebody you love them. It may be the last opportunity you have to do so. Brother Ernie, we love you. I love you, brother.
Love you
Keep
too,
doing
man.
what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time.